Thanks for coming. We've got a couple of announcements before we get started. First of all, of course, turn off all your cell phones. Airplane mode is okay if you want to do that. Also, in your seats when you came in, you should have some kind of evaluation form, and would really encourage you to fill that out after the session, or fill it out before the session if you want. But it's helpful to us in more than just getting feedback. It helps us to get grants, and when we can show participation from the people who are attending our sessions. So I want to encourage you to do that. My name is Jay Jennings. I'm the chair of the festival this year, which is a great honor, and also it gives me certain perks, like being able to choose the sessions that I want to moderate. And this is a particular thrill for me, because these are two writers that I've admired and tried to emulate for a long time, and to have them up here sitting next to me is a real honor, and also terrifying. So, but they happen to be both very nice gentlemen. So I have been, first of all, let me talk a little bit about Roy Blount Jr. I've been literally following Roy for almost 30 years now, although he may quibble with my use of the word literally. He attended Vanderbilt University and wrote for the student newspaper there, as did I. He then went on to work at Sports Illustrated, and shortly after he left, I went to work at Sports Illustrated. His first book was about a season with a football team, and so was mine. And he's now written 23 books, and I hope to do another one. But in 1980, I was in graduate school trying to figure out what kind of writer I wanted to be, and that's when his second book, Crackers, came out. And I immediately bought a copy, and here's my first edition to prove it.
There isn't a second edition.
That's rare. I'll get you to sign that. What convinced me to buy it really is the first sentence in the book, which I immediately identified with. I don't know about you, but I have this voice that goes, "What? Nah, that ain't no way to write a damn sentence. That's the limpest, damn piddliest, damn saddest looking, most clogged and whiny, damn hitching around, piss and corruption covered damn sentence I ever saw." So I also heard that voice. I subsequently wrote a couple of staggeringly unfunny pieces, humor pieces, and boldly sent them off to Roy for advice, hoping, of course, that he would just immediately forward them to William Shawn, recognizing my genius, and they would be included in the New Yorker. What I got back instead from Roy was a very generous, page-long letter, ending with these words of advice that I've never forgotten. Write like you talk when you're a little bit out of control, and then learn to control the out of control. And that was for a humor writer just starting out, it was good to have words from the Oracle. About this same time, I was working selling postcards at the Metropolitan Museum at a staggeringly unpopular exhibition, The Tapestries of Francois Boucher. So I had time to read the New Yorker cover to cover while I was waiting for patrons to come through. And I began seeing these humor pieces by a writer named Ian Fraser, which were so good that when his first book came out, Dating Your Mom, I immediately bought it. Here's my first edition to prove it. And finally, after another 15 years of trying to write funny pieces that would be the equal of these two, or at least in their ballpark, I was able to publish a few, though not in the New Yorker, which is still the gold standard. And one of the thrills of my life is that 3 of them were chosen to appear in this anthology, Mirth of a Nation, alongside pieces by Roy and Ian. So I'm glad to be on the bench with these starters. Beyond that, though, their literary reputations would be secure if they just rested on these humor pieces. And as evidence of that, I'll point to a New Yorker podcast. Every month they ask a fiction writer to choose a story that's appeared in the magazine before. Of all the fictions that's been published over the years, the writer Jonathan Franzen chose to read Ian Fraser's humor piece, Coyote versus Acme, which is in this collection. Not a first edition. But and for all you lawyers out there, it's a summary of a case in faux legal language about the Wile E. Coyote's court case against Acme Inc., which has provided him with so many dangerous products over the years. So, but in addition to the humor, both of these writers have shown themselves to be scholarly but not pedantic on a staggeringly wide array of topics. Roy has written on sports, politics, food, and language, the latter most recently in his most recent book, Alphabet Juice, which is kind of a follow-up to his earlier book, Alphabet Juice. And it might be summed up this way: he read the Oxford English Dictionary, so you didn't have to. And he found the mistakes. Sandy has written beautifully about his own family, about the Great Plains, about Native American life, fishing, and most recently Siberia, with his book, Travels in Siberia. It might be summed up this way: he endured 50 degrees below zero, so you don't have to. But at bottom, what each of these fantastic writers offers, no matter what he writes, is just a staggeringly entertaining and pleasurable reading experience. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming Roy Blount and Ian Fraser.
Well, I thought I'd start out by reading a little bit from a piece. It's not a humor piece and as such, but it's a piece that appeared in my anthology of essays about the outdoors called The Fish's Eye. And I don't know, I just thought I would read it because maybe it says something about writing and about books in addition to whatever else it says. And the piece is called Bad Advice. Some years ago, on a camping trip in the pine woods of northern Michigan, my friend Don brought along a copy of an outdoor cookbook that appeared on the bestseller lists at the time. This book contained many ingenious and easy-sounding recipes. One that Don especially wanted to try was called Breakfast in a Paper Bag. According to this recipe, you could take a small paper lunch sack, put strips of bacon in the bottom, break an egg into the sack on top of the bacon, fold down the top of the sack, push a stick through the fold, hold the sack over hot coals, and cook the bacon and egg in the sack in about 10 minutes. I watched as Don followed the directions exactly. Both he and I remarked that we would naturally have thought the sack would burn. The recipe, however, declared grease will coat the bottom of the bag as it cooks. Somehow, we both took this to mean that the grease, counterintuitively, actually made the bag less likely to burn. Marveling at the who would have guessed magic of it, we picked a good spot in the hot coals of our campfire, and Don held the sack above them. We watched. In a second and a half, the bag burst into leaping flames. Don was yelling for help, waving the bag around, trying to extinguish it, scattering egg yolk and smoldering strips of bacon and flaming paper into the combustible pines, while people at adjoining campfires stared in horror and wondered what they should do. The wild figures that the burning breakfast described in midair as Don waved the stick. The look of outraged, imbecile shock reflected on our faces. Those are images that stay with me. I replay the incident often in my mind. It is like a parable. Because a book told us to, we attempted to use greased paper as a frying pan on an open fire. For all I know, the trick is possible if you do it just so. We never repeated the experiment. But to me, the incident illustrates a larger truth about our species when it ventures out of doors. We go forth in abundant ignorance, near blind with fantasy, witlessly trusting words on a page, or a tip a guy we'd never met before gave us at a sporting goods counter in a giant discount store. About half the time, the faith that leads us into the outdoors is based on advice that is half-baked, made up, hypothetical, uninformed, spurious, or deliberately, heedlessly bad.
Well, you want me to read it?
Sure.
Okay, well, listen, I'm trying to think how this is about food, too. This is just a little piece of that is part of something. I wrote about how eating is like, reading and writing are sort of like eating. I grew up talking and eating at the same time. In my family, if we went down to visit my grandmother in Jacksonville, we would, there'd be about 10 or 12 family people around the table, and this is what it would sound like. And that's to thy service. Amen. Pitch in. I don't know where to start first. Big Mama has outdone herself tonight. Well, I just hope y'all can enjoy it. I believe I could eat a horse. But you look at them tomatoes. Ooh, don't they look good? Now Tatum, slow down. You let that child enjoy himself. Well, you think we didn't feed him at home? He didn't get any snack beans. Lord, pass that child some snack beans. Lila, how about you over there? You need something more. Butter beans? Ooh, land, no, I'm working on this corn. Come on, just a dab. Well, you talked me into it. Awful early to be getting this good of corn. Eugene, would you send that okra back around? Look at me, just a putting it away. I'm eating like a field hand. A little more tea to wash it down. These greens. Anybody want anything? I will have one more helping of that squash if nobody minds. It's so good. Little cornbread to sop that juice. One more mouthful of ham, then I do have to stop, sure enough. Look at all that chicken left. Have a little more there, Pharaoh. Or where would he put it? And just a spoonful of that gravy to put on my peas. Harold, we didn't raise you to put gravy on your peas. See, you know, you let that child eat the way he likes it. More rolls, anybody? How's think this is all I can hold. You better eat some more of this good chicken. No, I got to save room for pie. There's pie? Oh, this is pie? Now, Anita, you know good and well we wouldn't let y'all go back home and tell folks we didn't serve you any pie. Look at that pie. What is in this pie? This pie is so good. How do you get your crust to do like this, Big Mama? My crust won't do like this to save my life. Oh, I've had your crust. Your crust does fine. Well, I've eaten myself sick. Wasn't it good? I don't think I could touch another bite. I'm about to pop. Yes, Lord. Them tomatoes are special food. Got plenty more now, I can slice right up. Oh no, I'd die.
I don't even really like to talk about humor because it always seems to drain the humor of its humor. But I am interested in both these writers who write both humor and nonfiction, and I wonder if you all think that they feed each other, that it helps you as a writer to write straight nonfiction, and does that help your humor, or are they totally different muscles you're using?
Well, I think if you come at a subject from the point of view of humor, it gives you a way of picking a subject to write about. If you find a funny story or just something that you just sense there's something funny in there. I just did a whole book, rather long book, which I spent 17 years on, off and on, about Siberia and about Russia. And at first that wouldn't seem to have too much to do with humor, but Russia is a very funny country. And it helps if you've got to think about, we're global now, and what country are you going to write about? Well, let's pick the funny countries. That's where I feel like that would be stronger. And so that rules out, and I'm talking about intentionally. So if you're talking about intentionally, that rules out France. And Germany is an unintended, very funny, but very unintentional. And then you've got England, which is both funny intentionally and unintentionally. And Russia, which is extremely funny in both, I think more funny intentionally. It's a country where it's had such a horrible history that people have just sort of learned, to laugh at it. And as I kind of look more into the history of Russia, and the humor of it, I suppose it sounds kind of grim, but Russia is like slapstick, only you actually die. So that, my generation looks for extreme stuff, like extreme sports. Well, Russia is extreme humor, and applies to me in any case. So, but so that sort of helped to pick a subject and to feel comfortable, confident in it.
There was a strangely strong connection between Ohio and Russia.
Yeah.
A lot of travelers.
Yeah, it is a bizarre, almost like a footnote, but as I started the book because a very famous traveler in Siberia in the 19th century came from the hometown of my family's hometown, Norwalk, Ohio. And his name was George Kennan. He was related to the George Kennan who became the famous diplomat and global strategic thinker of the 20th century. But he traveled in Siberia and wrote a book. And as I did the research on Siberian travelers, I found that I was the 7th person from Ohio to travel in Siberia and write about it. And I don't know why it attracted people from Ohio. It's a kind of scary combination, but yeah, it is. It's a weird thing. And other Midwesterners too, people from Illinois, Indiana, Missouri. It was a time when, I don't know why, but a lot of Americans traveled there, and they tended to be from the Midwest.
I think that everything I've written has probably some humor in it. I wrote a biography of Robert E. Lee. You wouldn't expect to have a lot of humor. But I wrote a whole section about his sense of humor. The only time I ever, he had pet hens and things like that. He had a hen all during several months of the Civil War. She would lay an egg right at the door to his tent. He would, so they carried it around. And after Gettysburg, when they were trying to get out of Gettysburg, get away before they were eliminated, which they probably should have been by the Union side, they were hurriedly packing up, and suddenly somebody said, "Where's the hen? Where's the gentleman?" And they couldn't find her anywhere until finally they saw her already on the truck. Eventually, they ate her, but only after a long time. I won't tell the whole story, but there's one joke. One time we know that Robert E. Lee cracked himself, mostly himself, up. Well, it's a little complicated, but he walked into, when he was at Fort Hamilton, he was an older officer, he walked into a room where a number of his junior officers were discussing Puseyism, which was a form of, the Episcopal Church was drifting toward high church, under the influence of Pusey. I forgot his first name in England. It was a whole movement to make the Episcopal, Anglican Episcopal service more like the Catholic, with more higher seriousness. So they were arguing, and it was an interesting thing I read up on. A lot of men in America were against it because they were afraid their wives were going to start going to confession. And so anyway, there was this serious argument going on amongst these soldiers, these young officers, and Robert E. Lee listened to it for a minute, and he said, "Beware of pussyism." Just imagine, I don't think it went over all that. He didn't know whether Robert E. Lee had suddenly gone crazy or what. So then, whenever he would run into this young officer on the campus, there on the post, he would say, "Beware of pussyism." And then finally, the young officer got him back because of the Mexican War. After they had taken some big city in Mexico, the Mexicans were so eager to not be all be murdered that they invited the American troops into the church, and they had a big ceremony for them, special ceremony, and they paraded around with the Americans carrying candles around the church, and the young officer died. And General Winfield Scott was scared to death because he was afraid this would get back and ruin his presidential chances, which in fact it did. But there was a lot of candidates. And but anyway, the young officer tapped on Robert E. Lee and walked around the candle and said, "Is this pussyism?"
Roy, can you talk about your love affair with language? And particularly in your most recent book, you talk about words that are sonic-y.
Yeah. Well, my daughter claims it's because I did not breastfeed. My mother did not breastfeed. So I used to chew tobacco while I was young. I broke that habit. But I'm a oral person. And so it seems to me that language is at root. Most expressive language is oral too. There's all sorts of the sound. There's the notion propagated by linguists that the relation between words and their meanings is arbitrary. You can see that stated. And whenever I see it stated, I just shout out loud. And because I think that's crazy. I mean, that's not to say that you can figure out what a word means based on its sound, but there are elements of appropriateness to the sounds of words, and not just the sound of words. The word, I coined the term sonic heat. Hasn't been caught on, but as a combination of sonic and kinesthetic, because I think language has like a kinesthetic substance to it. For instance, this is a little bit crude, but I was reading an analysis of the word urination by some linguistic who said that it comes from the Latin verb urinare, to urinate. And but he said that the street Latin word, the focused word for that action was pissary. Yeah, that's pissary, I guess. And he said, which obviously has some onomatopoeic relevance. And I was like, yeah, there you go. You go, street Latin. And but then it hit me that in fact, the act of urination does not sound good unless you're doing it on a hot rock. But there is a kind of kinesthetic connection between the word piss and the action, because it starts out with a tight P, you know, like this, and then there's a little effort P, and then you can't say that about every word, but there are words like through, which goes straight through your mouth, whereas throttle starts out like through and gets back into your throttle stop. And then there's a lot of THR words. And then there's words like wince and squint. And to say that words and their meaning, nature and substance of the word is irrelevant to its meaning, is to say that the word splurge could mean scrimp just as well as scrimp does, and vice versa. Scrimp is a type word, and splurge is like that. So, it's, all comes probably of talking while I'm eating, I guess.
Sandy,
there's one more thing. The Charles Portis in Norwood, Norwood goes up to New York and he sees two kids roasting marshmallows over a burning mattress. And he says, that ain't gonna taste like anything cooked over hair. And I get hair and mattress. It's a lot of writing to me just doesn't taste like it. It tastes like it's been cooked over hair. And it all tastes like it's cooked over something good.
Yeah, on that note, there's a word in Norwood that I've always loved when he talks about the I think it's cicadas or the June bugs being burned up in the fire of an oil refinery flame and pankling down on the roof, the tin roofs, and I looked up pankle in OED. It's nowhere to be found. It's a very sonic-y word though that I think he coined. Sandy, when you spent a lot of time trying to learn Russian,
Right.
How can you explain that experience?
Well, it's interesting, kind of ties in with what Roy was saying about urination, because
Nice segue.
Because the word for writer is pisyatel, and the word for to piss is similar. So it's very easy to make that mistake as a beginner when you say, I write something, and people are horrified. You realize you just got the pronunciation of that S just a little bit off. I started out with zero Russian. I made trips over 17 years, as I said, and I started out with no Russian. And it was a very interesting experience to be, and maybe many people here have had it, it's an interesting experience to be someplace where you do not know anything that the people are saying. And this was, when I was there, it was right after the first sort of fall of the Soviet Union. So Russians are very well-educated people, but these were people who hadn't had much experience speaking English at all, even if they might know a little bit. And so they didn't talk English around me. And I had an experience which has really made me sympathize with my pets, because I would hear a whole long stream of language, And the only thing that I would recognize in that whole long stream of language would be my own name. And I realized that's how dogs listen. You know, they're just sitting there. My shapa, which means I never know where my hat is. And it always got things off to a good start. I can see that you do not know where your hat is, or anything else. But gradually I came up with, I studied it just a lot with different people, and I also traveled a lot there, so I would just pick up things with, you know, just by listening to people that I was with. And I was not, you know, I was in my 40s when I started it, and its language acquisition goes way down. But my hero, George Kennan, had learned Russian in far eastern Siberia with sled dog drivers. And when he showed up in social situations back in western Russia, people were appalled. They could understand what he was saying, but they were appalled. I went to Washington to study in an intensive course where I actually lived in the house of this teacher who had taught. He teaches State Department officials and CIA people. And he's from Odessa, and he's a wonderful teacher. And I came in just speaking the Russian that I knew. And he's like he loves language and he knows it so well. And I would describe his ears as almost prehensile. You know, his ears are just listening. And as I would start talking, he would go, like listening to someone play the violin with him. And after a while, he just, okay, and he would switch to English. And he said, I understood what you were saying, but the Russian you're speaking is hooligan Russian. I said, I don't mean you talk like a Russian hooligan. He said, you talk like a dog that picked us up on the street. So it returns to my dog. But after studying with him for 9 weeks, I then took a trip. And at that point, my Russian was tolerably good. And on 3 occasions, I think, in Russia, I made a joke deliberately that they got. And it's like hitting a shot in basketball from half court. It was the most unbelievable thrill to say something that actually made people laugh in Russian. And it was so much fun that it was addictive. I would try that. And I'd do it. I'd wait, you know, for another 10 years before I did another one, because often, you know, I was the source of wit, but not witty in myself. And so that being able to do it, the distance in languages between one. That's the sad thing when you're in another country, is that the things that you know down in your soul, you can't. It's so hard to get it across. Poetry doesn't come across, and humor doesn't come across. And it's, you know, global as we get, that will never, I don't think, ever go away. And even though that divide is so great, when you do make that jump, it's amazing. It's like a spark has jumped this great distance.
Can you tell us one of those Russian jokes?
I can tell you one, and I can guarantee you that people laughed, but it might not come off as that funny. I was in somebody's house, and their cat was all climbing on me. And the situation was my 2 guides, who I went with, chased women all across Siberia. We lived in tents. They would bring women to my tent. And I would get up and they would say, here's a 1st grade teacher who would like to meet you. I would politely talk, and I'm being totally honest, I didn't think it was sound policy to do what my guides were doing. I also didn't drink in Russia, which is an achievement it's really hard not to do. So this was drinking and hanging out with local Siberian women. And we were in the apartment of these 2 women in a very remote Siberian town. And this cat is climbing all over me. So both my guides had paired off with these women, and I had, you know, I was supposedly the boss, but I'm, you know, just sitting there. And the cat is climbing all over me. And one of the women says, wow, that's funny, because that cat usually only climbs on women. And she doesn't climb on men. And I said, Da, и я настоящий мужчина, which means, yes, and I am a real man. And they, given the circumstances, they laugh. So that's one.
Roy, do you have any experience of trying to tell a joke in a foreign language?
No. I don't know. I mean, I've picked up smatterings of various languages, but no. Actually, I do in France. I once, but I can't remember. It also involved women, but I was with my wife. It was, but no, but I like. I think I have. I'm trying to think. Maybe I've written some. Anyway, I like. I enjoy tossing in a little foreign language from time to time, but I don't think I've ever made a whole joke. I've certainly kidded around in French. I think they were just laughing at my French.
We want to have some time for some questions, but first, Sandy wanted to read another piece.
Yeah, I want to read this piece. William Whitworth, who's here, edited this piece at the Atlantic. This was some years ago, and he came up with the title of it, and it's a piece with a biblical theme. So I thought there would be people here familiar with the Bible who might like it. I did this book about my family. When I go back in my family's history, they were mostly preachers. A lot of them were preachers. And so I read books that they read, and I read the Bible back and forth, and read books like Fox's Book of Martyrs. Any of you have that on your shelf? And I read the book of Leviticus with great interest because it tells you what you can eat and what you can't eat. You can't eat weasel, in case you're wondering. And at the same time, I had young children. And I would find myself, this is I guess also following the food theme, I found myself saying things to children, to my kids, that I realized I had never said before in my life, and I would never say again. And I would go and write those things down. I had the kids in the back seat. We'd just been to the grocery store. They were in their car seats. I put the grocery bags on the floor of the car right in front of the car seats. The kids were barefoot. It was summer. And the bread was on the top of the grocery bag. And I look back, and the kids are kneading bread with their bare feet. And so I just said, "Don't rub your feet on bread." Now you'll say that once. Anyway. So this piece is called Laws Concerning Food and Drink, Household Principles, Lamentations of the Father. Of the beasts of the field and of the fishes of the sea, and of all foods that are acceptable in my sight you may eat, but not in the living room. Of the hoofed animals, broiled or ground into burgers you may eat, but not in the living room. Of the cloven hoofed animals, plain or with cheese, you may eat, but not in the living room. Of the cereal grains of the corn and of the wheat and of the oats, and of all the cereals that are of bright color and unknown provenance you may eat, but not in the living room. Of the quiescently frozen dessert, and of all frozen after-meal treats you may eat, but absolutely not in the living room. Of the juices and other beverages, yes, even of those in sippy cups you may drink, but not in the living room, neither may you carry such therein. Indeed, when you reach the place where the living room carpet begins, of any food or beverage there you may not eat, neither may you drink. But if you are sick and are lying down and watching something, then may you eat in the living room. Laws when at table. And if you are seated in your high chair or in a chair such as a greater person might use, keep your legs and feet below you as they were. Neither raise up your knees nor place your feet upon the table, for that is an abomination. Yes, even when you have an interesting bandage to show, your feet upon the table are an abomination and worthy of rebuke. Drink your milk as it is given you, neither use on it any utensils, nor fork, nor knife, nor spoon, for that is not what they are for. If you will dip your blocks in the milk and lick it off, you will be sent away. When you have drunk, let the empty cup then remain upon the table, and do not bite it upon its edge, and by your teeth hold it to your face in order to make noises in it sounding like a duck, or you will be sent away. When you chew your food, keep your mouth closed until you have swallowed, and do not open it to show your brother or your sister what is within. I say to you, do not so, even if your brother or your sister has done the same to you. Eat your food only. Do not eat that which is not food, neither seize the table between your jaws, nor use the raiment of the table to wipe your lips. I say again to you, do not touch it, but leave it as it is. And though your stick of carrot does indeed resemble a marker, draw not with it upon the table, even in pretend, for we do not do that, that is why. And though the pieces of broccoli are very like small trees, do not stand them upright to make a forest, because we do not do that, that is why. Sit just as I have told you, and do not lean to one side or the other, nor slide down until you are nearly slid away. Heed me, for if you sit like that, your hair will go into the syrup. And now behold, even as I have said, it has come to pass. Laws pertaining to dessert. For we judge between the plate that is unclean and the plate that is clean, saying, first, if the plate is clean, then you shall have dessert. But of the unclean plate, the laws are these. If you have eaten most of your meat and 2 bites of your peas, with each bite consisting of not fewer than 3 peas each, or in total 6 peas, eaten where I can see, and you have also eaten enough of your potatoes to fill 2 forks, both forkfuls eaten where I can see, then you shall have dessert. But if you eat a lesser number of peas, and yet you eat the potatoes, still you shall not have dessert. And if you eat the peas, yet leave the potatoes uneaten, you shall not have dessert, no, not even a small portion thereof. And if you try to deceive by moving the potatoes around with a fork, that it may appear you have eaten what you have not, you will fall into iniquity. And I will know, and you shall have no dessert. On screaming, do not scream, for it is as if you scream all the time. If you are given a plate on which 2 foods you do not wish to touch each other are touching each other, your voice rises up even to the ceiling, while you point to the offense with the finger of your right hand. But I say to you, scream not, only remonstrate gently with the server, that the server may correct the fault. Likewise, if you receive a portion of fish from which every piece of herbal seasoning has not been scraped off, and the herbal seasoning is loathsome to you and steeped in vileness, again I say, refrain from screaming, though the vileness overwhelm you and cause you a faint unto death. Make not that sound from within your throat, neither cover your face, nor press your fingers to your nose. For even now I have made the fish as it should be. Behold, I eat of it myself, yet do not die. Concerning face and hands, cast your countenance upward to the light, and lift your eyes to the hills, that I may more easily wash you off. For the stains are upon you, even to the very back of your head there is rice thereon. And in the breast pocket of your garment, and upon the tie of your shoe, rice and other fragments are distributed in a manner wonderful to see. Only hold yourself still. Hold still, I say. Give each finger in its turn for my examination thereof, and also each thumb. Lo, how iniquitous they appear. What I do is as it must be, and you shall not go hence until I have done. Various other laws, statutes, and ordinances. Bite not, lest you be cast into quiet time. Neither drink of your own bathwater, nor of bathwater of any kind, nor rub your feet on bread, even if it be in the package, nor rub yourself against cars, nor against any building, nor eat sand. Leave the cat alone, for what has the cat done? That you should so afflict it with tape. And hum not that humming in your nose as I read, nor stand between the light and the book. Indeed, you will drive me to madness, nor forget what I said about the tape. Complaints and lamentations. Oh, my children, you are disobedient. For when I tell you what you must do, you argue, and dispute hotly even to the littlest detail. And when I do not exceed, you cry out, and hit and kick. Yes, and even sometimes do you spit, and shout, stupid head, and other and hit and kick the wall and the molding thereof when you are sent to the corner. And though the law teaches that no one shall be sent to the corner for more minutes than he has years of age, yet I would leave you there all day, so mighty am I in anger. But upon being sent to the corner, you ask straight away, can I come out? And I reply, no, you may not come out. And again you ask, and again I give the same reply. But when you ask again the third time, then you may come out. Hear me, O my children, for the bills they kill me. I pay and pay again, even to the 12th time in a year, and yet again they mount higher than before. For our health, that we may be covered, I give 1,965 talents 12 times in a year, but even this covers not the 1,500 deductible for each member of the family. And yet for ordinary visits, we still are not covered, nor for many medications, nor for the teeth within our mouths. Guess not at what rage is in my mind, for surely you cannot know. For I will come to you at the 1st of the month, and at the 15th of the month with the bills and a great whining and moan. And when the month of taxes comes, I will decry the wrong and unfairness of it, and mourn with wine and ashtrays, and rend my receipts. And you shall remember that I am, before, after, and until you are 21. Hear me then, and avoid me in my wrath, O children of me.
Reminds me that my son, when he was a little kid, was eating an ice cream cone once, and he got tired of it. His sister took it over, and she ate on it for a while, and then she said, well, here's your gum.
On that note, I'm happy to open up the floor for questions. Yes?
Me?
Yeah.
I wondered if you think people on the eastern part of the country are funnier and get your jokes better than people on the western part of the country.
I wouldn't divide it horizontally.
I would say each coast gets jokes differently. I mean, they're similar in how they get. There's a kind of humor that comes from the Midwest, which is just straight-facedly lying to somebody, just telling them something that just is preposterously untrue. And that is, I found in places like New York, is considered sort of out of bounds, you know. And we used to do it all the time when I was a kid. And just say something that just couldn't possibly be true. It was straight face, and I think that, you know, that maybe goes back to, I don't know, Frontier Tall Tales or something like that. I don't know what it's from, but I have found that that is not a good thing to do. In New York, that I've had that where I've told people. I told someone, a woman who asked me to dance many years ago when I was young, and I told her that in Ohio we did not dance. Just on foot, we did it in our car. In the parking lot and tuned to the same station on the radio, and then we kind of square dances in the cars. And this woman was from Czechoslovakia, and it later got back to me through like 4 people. Wow, what did you tell her? She was telling everybody, isn't it interesting? And I thought she knew I was kidding, but you have to be careful.
Yeah, anyone else? More questions? Yes, Rick.
So we hear a lot of legend and rumor about what it's like to work at the New Yorker. And I just wonder, and it's probably different now under David Remnick than it was, you know, William Shawn, et cetera. So can you just talk a little about your experience of being a New Yorker writer?
I do not have an office there anymore. I haven't had an office for many years. I don't go in. It's now in the Condé Nast building, which is dozens of other, or many other magazines. It used to be its own building. That building now has a historic marker on it. It says this used to be the New Yorker building, the building where the New Yorker was. So it has changed a lot. When I first went there, people didn't talk to you. You didn't talk, and you weren't supposed to talk. And the windows of the offices were sort of semi, you know, they were opaque, but you could tell someone was in there if the light was on. And someone described it as being like a sex research clinic. It was just kind of spooky or what, you didn't know what was going on. And since then, it has just, back then you could be weird. It has really, I feel bad, like writers now, you've got to be presentable or they'll find someone who is. So, but back then you did not have to be presentable. And there are a lot of people who really weren't at all. And that was fun, you know. I mean, I went in one time and there was a very revered older writer, I won't say his name, who had kind of lost his mind. And he was sitting in the waiting room, and he had his false teeth out. And he was going, and now when I read about the great pieces this guy wrote, I think, yeah, but he didn't have crazy habit. And that is not so much a feature. Now it's, you know, I think just that it's eccentricity in general is maybe on the decline. And it used to be a place very much to focus on eccentricity. It's less that.
Yes?
I'm wondering what your impression of Little Rock is.
We've seen very little of it in the last 12 hours. I love that. We're in the hotel.
Capitol.
Great hotel. Huge ceilings. And I really love the hotel. You can walk down the stairs, you know, and you see the lobby from every floor. I love really basically like hotels and everything. And there's all kinds of different shampoo.
You know what they call it? Hair wash.
Hair wash.
Is that the same as shampoo? I was going to call it heads.
I was at a hotel in Philadelphia one time, and they had a bar soap that was labeled bath soap, and another bar that was labeled personal soap. Brought up to use a pretty personal thing. You know. There were things you can do with soap that I didn't know about. We'll call them the best.
I have never been here before, and to me it was like a literary camp because Bill Werwith was from here, and Charles Portis, who was like the most revered writer. And I picked up the paper this morning. I'm glad you asked this question. Because I picked up the paper this morning, and I thought, this is a wonderful paper. It's got all kinds of stuff in it, the Democrat Gazette. And I was just reading it with such interest. And here's on the front page, it says, and just a bunch of little items here. It says, John Umhofer, a spokesman for the Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association, said a 24-pound Dutch Vermeer cheese named the best in the world last month has been auctioned off for $8,400 or $350 per pound as part of a sale that raised $140,000 to help educate cheesemakers. This is on the front page. To me, this is a great
Would we hear your Saturday afternoon show on public radio right about now?
Yeah, Thursday nights, usually.
Is it as much fun as it sounds like?
No, it's all fun. It's fun, yeah, but you have to go to Chicago. And sometimes, we've never done it in Little Rock, I think, but we do it in other cities. Well, I'd love to, sure. I'll just stay here until they In fact, Doug Berman, who created it, started out with, you know, if you ever saw the old Groucho Marx Quiz show, You Bet Your Life, it started out with the idea of Carl Castle as Fenneman. Fenneman was a straight guy, and it dipped all dipped around the rock, and it's called Castle. It's sort of like sports, you know, because it is taped. You know, if nobody can think of anything funny to say, you can just say something ridiculous, and you know, and keep the ball down just in the court for a while, and pass it back and forth, and then